What we're going to do now is called the circular flow model. You had a very brief introduction to that in Chapter 1. But here we are. Let's go over it. Now we're going to actually use it. So, down here, let's put product markets. Okay. Up here will be resource or factor markets. Often called, actually probably more often called factor markets. Over here are households. And over here, firms or businesses. Okay, this is going to be a very simple flow. I mean, we'll start out, we can make this as complicated as we want, but let's start out with it being real simple. Okay, here we go. Hang on. Households spend money in the product markets and that money goes to firms, and what do they get back? Goods and services. Okay, now let me pause for a minute to let that sink in, because that's pretty complicated. Now my guess is actually that you've engaged in a few of these transactions. Okay? So if you've ever gone to the store, you've done this. Okay, this is real hard. You go to the store, you spend your money, and you buy something. There you go. That's what that is. Okay, easy enough. See, I told you this was simple. Well, let's look at the resource or factor markets now. Households sell their labor services in the factor or resource markets, right? Another way of saying that, you go to work, okay? And what do you get in return? The firms who buy your labor services pay you, right? And you receive income for your work. So there you go again. You've probably engaged in that, where you went to work and you got a paycheck. There it is. Our economy, our simple economy. You spend your money, you buy stuff. Where do you get your money? Well, you go to work and they pay you. Okay. Now, we can make it more complicated. We can put government, say, in there and have siphon off taxes. And, of course, government's going to be hiring people, and they're going to be buying goods and services. And some of this spending is going to be siphoned off here over into foreign countries, goods produced there. And they're going to be buying, the income they receive from us, they will be buying our stuff. So we can get that a little more complicated. But this is in essence how things work. Now, this is a key. Here's what we're trying to get out of this, though. What is the value of the goods and services produced in the economy? This. We want to be able to measure the value of all the goods and services being produced. We want to see how big the economy is. In other words, how much is this? Well, it's just equal to the spending. However much we spend is equal, that's the value of the goods and services produced. Right? Right. Another thing I want you to notice, or to get out of this, is notice that this spending flows through as income. So how much income is there in the economy? The amount of this spending. All this spending ends up as income in somebody's pocket, whether it's wages and salaries or interest income or dividend income, corporate profits. Okay? All this. So what's the value of the income in the economy? Just the value of the spending. We can measure income by spending. We can measure the value of the goods and services produced in the economy by the spending. And that's what we're going to focus. There's a couple of ways to focus on this. We can itemize all the various types of income. Oh, and by the way, that has a name. The value of all these goods and services. Yeah, well, I was getting to that. Gross domestic product or gross national product. Started off as gross national product, actually. And what happened was during the Great Depression, we didn't know how bad things were. We just didn't know. And so Simon Kuznets, an economist, was hired to come up with some kind of what we call the national income accounts. And what he did is he came up with something called the gross national product. Or GNP. The gross national product is the value of all final goods and services produced by U.S. firms or citizens, okay? Over the course of a year, okay, or over the course of whatever period of time it is. Typically, it's a year. It comes out, the estimates of GNP come out, well, actually, it's GDP, but I'm getting ahead of myself here nowadays. But every quarter, we get an estimate of what it is. So why did they come up with this? Well, first of all, having some national income accounts and some accounting helps us to identify economic problems early on, instead of waiting until it's too late. We can catch things earlier. We know what's happening before they get so bad that they're so obvious. And we can evaluate economic policy to see which way the wind's blowing by some numbers. Well, that's from, I guess the 1930s through the early 1990s. GNP was the single biggest economic number there is. Okay, that's like the final score. That's the bottom line. Well, in around 1991 or 1992, the world economy became very interconnected. And of course, that was right about the time the internet was coming online, and that really globalized the economy in a very big way. But they decided that what was more relevant was gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is the value of all final goods and services. I'm going to all that, same as GNP, value of all final goods and services produced, here's the difference, within our borders. Okay, here's the difference. What we really thought was relevant was not necessarily how much U.S. firms and citizens were producing, because much of that production was taking place around the world. What was really relevant, what we were most interested in, is what was being produced right here within our borders, irrespective of who was doing the producing. For example, there's the BMW plant in South Carolina, and that plant hires a lot of people in South Carolina. All good, right? So, but because BMW is a German firm, all that production in South Carolina of those BMWs would not count in GNP, because it's a German firm, not a U.S. firm. And I don't know if it's still the case, but Ford used to be the top auto producer in Great Britain. I'm sure they're still one of the top, if not still the top. All that production of autos, that's great. It's great for Ford shareholders. Great for Great Britain. Okay, so all that does show up in U.S. gross national product. So the change, the emphasis was switched from GNP to GDP. Okay. And that is now our prime emphasis as gross domestic product. We were interested mostly, GNP is still calculated, but our emphasis, that's our number, GDP. What is being produced within our borders, the value of all final goods and services produced within our borders.